Most men spend years trying to figure out what women want. Older men already know, and the answer isn't what you think. Words are not just sounds we make to fill silence. They carry weight, they carry feeling. And when the right word lands at the right moment, it doesn't just enter someone's ears, it enters their chest. That's not poetic exaggeration. That's how human communication actually works. Think about a time someone said something to you that you still remember years later. It wasn't the longest sentence, it probably wasn't even planned, but it hit something real inside you. That's emotional weight doing its job. Women in particular are deeply tuned into the emotional frequency of words. Research in psychology consistently shows that women process language with more emotional context than men on average. They're not just hearing what you say, they're feeling the intention behind it. They're reading the energy underneath the words. So, when a man speaks with genuine feeling, not performance, not rehearsed lines, she picks that up immediately. The words land differently. They feel different because they are different. This is why hollow compliments don't work. You're gorgeous is a word, but it carries no real emotional weight because it wasn't built from genuine observation. It was pulled off a shelf. She's heard it before and she'll hear it again. It doesn't move her because it didn't come from anything real. But a word spoken from actual presence, from a man who is truly paying attention, carries something she can feel. It's warm, it's specific, it's personal, and that specificity is where the emotional weight lives. This is something older men tend to understand naturally. They've stopped trying to sound impressive. They just speak from what they actually observed, what they actually felt. And because of that, even simple words carry a kind of gravity that makes a woman stop and think. This one is different. Confidence is one of those things that's easy to fake for a minute and impossible to fake for long. Women know this. They've seen enough performances to recognize when something is real and when someone is just putting on a show. Real confidence doesn't announce itself. It doesn't walk into a room loudly or try to dominate every conversation. It's quiet. It's settled. It's the kind of energy that says, I'm comfortable with who I am, and I don't need you to confirm that for me. Older men tend to carry this naturally, not because they're better people, but because they've been through enough. They've failed, they've been rejected, they've built things, lost things, and kept going. That life experience creates a kind of groundedness that younger men are still working toward. And here's where it connects to words. When a man speaks from that grounded place, even ordinary words carry a different weight. He's not saying things to get a reaction. He's not scanning her face after every sentence to see if she's impressed. He just speaks, calmly, clearly, without apology. That energy is felt before the words even register. She notices the stillness in him, the lack of neediness, the fact that he seems completely fine whether this conversation goes well or it doesn't. That is deeply attractive to women because it signals something real. This man is not going to crumble under pressure. Most men give themselves away in the first 30 seconds. Their voice gets slightly higher. They over-explain. They laugh at things that aren't funny just to keep her comfortable. These are all signs of someone seeking approval. And approval seeking, no matter how subtle, pushes people away. Confidence is the current running underneath the words. Get that right. And the two words do exactly what they're supposed to do. There's something every human being wants at a deep level. To be seen. Not just looked at. Actually seen, recognized for who they are beyond the surface, beyond the role they play, beyond the version of themselves they show to the world by default. Women carry this need strongly, and it makes complete sense when you think about it. Most of the attention women receive from men is surface level. It's about how they look, what they're wearing, how attractive they are in that moment. It's attention, yes, but it's not personal. It's generic. It could be directed at anyone. So when a man comes along and notices something real, something specific to her, something she didn't put on display, it cuts through all the noise. It reaches a part of her that rarely gets touched in everyday interactions. That's why the phrase, "I noticed," works the way it does. It's not about flattery. It's about evidence. evidence that he was actually present, that he was watching her, not her appearance, but her, the way she thinks, the way she moves through a conversation, the small things she does when she's not performing for anyone. When a woman feels genuinely noticed like that, something shifts in her. Her guard comes down. Not because she made a decision to trust him, but because her instincts told her, this person is safe. This person actually paid attention. Most people walk through life feeling slightly invisible, even in crowded rooms, even surrounded by people who claim to care about them. The experience of being truly seen is rare enough that when it happens, it stays with you. A man who can create that feeling, consistently, genuinely, without an agenda, becomes someone a woman remembers. Not because of what he looked like, because of how he made her feel in that one real moment. There's a reason silence makes most people uncomfortable. We've been conditioned to fill it, to keep talking, to add more words on top of words, as if the volume of what we say determines its value. It doesn't, and women pick up on that very quickly. Over-talking is one of the most common ways men accidentally kill attraction. They get nervous, they get excited, and they start pouring words out hoping something lands. But what actually lands is the opposite. The pause, the restraint, the moment where a man chooses not to speak and is completely comfortable with that choice. Less is more isn't just a design principle, it's a social truth. When you say less, what you do say carries more weight. It suggests that you thought before you spoke, that you don't need to fill every gap, that you're confident enough in your presence that silence doesn't threaten you. Older men have usually learned this through experience. They've had enough conversations to know that the man who talks the least often holds the most power in the room. Not because he's withholding or playing games, but because every word he says feels chosen, deliberate, worth hearing. 2 words hit harder than 20 when they come from that place. I noticed is only 2 words, but because it's specific, calm, and unhurried, it lands with the kind of weight that a nervous 5-minute compliment never could. Think about how you feel when someone gives you a long, rambling explanation versus when someone looks at you and says one clear, honest thing. The second one stays with you. It respects your intelligence. It doesn't try too hard. Women are drawn to men who communicate with that kind of economy. It signals self-assurance. It signals that he knows his own value without needing to convince anyone of it. Women have been navigating social situations their entire lives with a heightened awareness that most men don't fully appreciate. From a young age, they learn to read rooms, read people, and read intentions. It's not a skill they had to study. It developed naturally through experience and necessity. This means that when a man approaches with a line, something rehearsed, something polished, something that sounds like it came from a script, she knows. She might smile. She might even engage. But somewhere inside, something closes because she felt the performance. And performance creates distance. Authenticity works in the exact opposite direction. When something is real, she feels that too. There's a warmth to it, a naturalness. The words don't sound like they were prepared in front of a mirror. They sound like they came from a person who was just being honest in that moment. This is why I noticed only works when it's true. If you didn't actually notice anything, if you're just using it as a technique, it will come across hollow. Your body language won't match. Your eye contact will feel slightly off. The energy behind the words won't be there, and she will feel that gap between what you're saying and what you actually mean. But when it's genuine, when you actually did notice something real about her, the words carry a completely different texture. They land with ease. There's no tension underneath them, no agenda pushing through. Just one person sharing an honest observation with another. That ease is what disarms her, not the words themselves, the realness behind them. Older men tend to operate from this place more naturally because they've stopped trying to engineer outcomes. They're not running a strategy. They're just being present and speaking from what they genuinely observed. And that simplicity is more powerful than any technique ever could be. Timing is one of those things that separates a good musician from a great one. The notes matter, but when you play them matters just as much. The same is true in conversation. You can say the right thing at the wrong moment and watch it fall completely flat. Most men don't think about this. They find their opening and they take it. Regardless of where the conversation is, regardless of what she's feeling in that moment, regardless of whether the energy is actually right. They're so focused on saying the thing that they miss the moment entirely. Older men have learned to read the rhythm of a conversation the way an experienced driver reads traffic. They're not just watching the car in front of them, they're watching everything. The flow, the pauses, the shifts in energy. They know when to accelerate and when to hang back. In conversation, this looks like patience. It looks like a man who isn't rushing to make his point, who lets things breathe, who notices when a genuine moment opens up and then speaks into it cleanly without hesitation. That's when I noticed lands perfectly, not forced into the first 30 seconds, not dropped awkwardly into a gap in the conversation, but placed almost naturally into a moment where she's relaxed, present, and actually open to receiving something real. Silence plays a huge role in this. A man who is comfortable with silence can feel when it shifts from awkward to comfortable. That shift is usually the window. That's when a well-placed observation hits differently than it would anywhere else in the conversation. Women remember how a conversation felt more than what was actually said. When the timing is right, the words feel effortless, like they arrived exactly when they were supposed to. And that feeling, that ease, is what she associates with him long after the conversation ends. There's a difference between sparking interest and building connection. A lot of advice out there focuses entirely on the first one: how to get attention, how to seem attractive, how to make a strong first impression. But attention without connection is just a moment. It fades. Connection is what stays. This is where I noticed goes deeper than most people realize. On the surface, it looks like a conversation opener, but what it actually does is create a moment of genuine human contact. It says, I was present enough to see something real in you, and that is the foundation of connection, not just attraction. Women are not just looking for a man who excites them. They're looking for a man who actually gets them, who pays attention, who shows up with real awareness rather than a polished routine. That kind of man feels rare because he is rare. When a woman feels genuinely connected to someone, even briefly, even in a short conversation, her brain responds differently than it does to surface-level flattery. Something relaxes in her. She starts to lean in, not just physically, but emotionally. She becomes curious about him because he made her feel something real. Respect is quietly woven into all of this. When you notice something real about a person and name it honestly, you're treating them as a full human being worth paying attention to, not an object to impress, not a goal to achieve, a person. And people can feel when they're being treated that way. Older men who have lived with depth understand that the most meaningful moments between two people are rarely loud or dramatic. They're small, quiet, a sentence that landed right, a look that said more than words, a moment where two people actually met each other honestly. That's what these two words are really reaching for. Not a technique, a genuine moment of one person truly seeing another. We've covered a lot of ground in this conversation, but if you strip everything back to its core, it really comes down to one thing: presence. The two words I noticed work not because they're magic. They work because of everything behind them: the genuine attention, the calm confidence, the patience to wait for the right moment, the authenticity that makes her feel something real rather than something rehearsed. Most men are so focused on what to say that they completely miss the point. It was never about the words alone. It was always about the kind of man who says them and the energy he carries when he does. Women are not complicated. They're just deeply perceptive. They can feel the difference between a man who is performing and a man who is simply present, between a man who wants to impress and a man who genuinely cares enough to pay attention. That difference is everything. Older men figured this out not by reading about it, but by living through enough experiences to stop overthinking it. They stopped trying to win and started showing up honestly. And that shift, that simple internal shift, changed how every interaction felt to the people around them. You don't need a long list of lines. You don't need a strategy. You need to slow down enough to actually see the person in front of you. Notice something real. Say it simply. Mean it fully. That's the whole thing. 2 words backed by genuine presence, real observation, calm confidence, and zero agenda. That combination is rare, and rare things get remembered. The men who understand this don't chase connection. They create the conditions for it, and then they let it happen naturally. That's not a trick. That's just what it looks like when a man is truly showing up.